Let's preview this program before we dive into the source code. Regions, I can go Africa down to South America. I can select the number of answers I want to choose from. Here you can see I have 2 choices. If I go to 3, now we have 3 choices, 4 choices, or I can just go in learn mode and just have 1. You get it. So we know this is the Bahamas and this is Dominica. Now when I get it wrong, like if I pick Mexico for this flag, notice the color. So this is pink and that was green. You get it. And we know that this right here is Haiti. Let's get it wrong again. You get it. And that's the app. The source code to this video is available on my GitHub account. Go to github.com softwareNuggets. Then go to the repository Python shorts. Look for a folder called Learn Country Flags. Here's the source code to this app. Here is the JSON file. Here is a zip file that contains all the flags. So you know the source code is in my GitHub account, but we're going to go through line by line. If you're in learn mode, you're learning how to write your first program or just learn in general, I recommend just walk through this with me. Let's type in every line of code. You're going to make errors, and that's how you're going to learn from this. So let's go slowly. This is the backup, go getting it from github.com. Let's begin. So we're going to begin with a bunch of import statements. Now these are like libraries, and our program will be using the TkInter library. Pill, you probably don't have that installed, so you're going to need to go to the command line and say pip install pillow. That allows us to manipulate images. Now these right here are just part of Python, OS, random, JSON, sys, and copy. Flag dir. Well, from my GitHub account, you saw that there's a zip file, and those are where all the images are. So inside of a folder, I've called that country flags. Now regions, well, these are that first drop-down combo. These are all the regions that this current program supports. As you can see here, inside of the class object quiz app, there are 19 functions. So up here is our constructor. Now I'm passing in root, and notice self.root. Then I'm going to give it a title. Geometry is the size of the window. So this is 800 by 700. And I'm going to set the background to light blue. On line 34, self, root, sizable, false, false. I don't want this to resize. This is going to be a fixed window, 800 by 700. These instant variables collectively manage the quiz state, including the user progress, the number of questions and answers, the data needed to determine the correct answers. They all help ensure that this quiz application can correctly track and update the quiz flow and user action. Now notice when I called the constructor, I said data is none. And then this data now equals none, and that's what I'm initializing data, line 36. So look what we've done so far. We set the title, Country Flag Quiz by softwareNuggets. You see that right here. The window size is fixed, 800 by 700, and the background is light blue, non-sizable. On lines 45 to 49, notice I'm creating a variable called flag label. This is where the actual image is going to go to. And then we have buttons 1, 2, 3, and 4. As you can see, each button is assigned a default caption, and when we click on it, it goes to check answer with the appropriate index 0, 1, 2, 3. So where this image is, that is flag label. And these buttons, button 1, 2, 3, 4, that's just how I declared it right here inside of my constructor. On line 51, this is where we're going to load that file called allcountries.json. As you can see here, allcountries.json is just a JSON file. Key value. The value here is an array of objects where we have the country code, DZ, and the country name, Algeria. So country code plus an extension is actually what we're going to be putting up here in flag label. That's important because when you look at this file and you have questions, it's simple. Here is your region, here's your image name, kind of like dz.png, and then this would be the country name. Each of these country names are what goes on these buttons. That's how I did that. As you can see here on line 59, we're going to call a function called create widgets. And I'm going to put a couple more labels on our form, a scoreboard, if you will, and I'm going to hide all these buttons. You can see down here at the bottom of a running app, you see where it says questions correct? Well, that's what that will look like. So that finishes up our constructor. We don't need to even come back and look at this anymore. Inside of the constructor, we have three functions, 1, 2, and 3. Let's first do read JSON. Now on line 68, we have read JSON file. Notice I'm sending in the path. Then I'm going to try. Well, you know, for every try except, it's quite possible that this path does not exist. And if it doesn't exist, we can get one of these three types of errors. That's the goal. Now remember, when we did this right here, if I cannot open this file, I'm actually going to do a sys.exit. The goal of read JSON file is to populate the object self.data. Now create widgets begins with input frame. It's of type label frame. Notice I'm using that root, the same thing that we defined down here when we started this whole thing. Now I'm going to lay that out from 0, 0, a row span of 2, a column span of 5. Now setting this north, south, east, west, that makes it go across the screen. And then I'm going to pad X and I'm going to pad Y, both with 10. Let's take a look at that. And there is our label frame. Notice we have padding around this. You know, remember X is left to right, 10, and Y is top to bottom. Does that make sense? So there is our label frame. Now we're going to be calling that input frame, and you're going to see how I'm using this frame to make a collection. Let us now drop this code in right here, and what it does is it makes sure that our columns line up correctly. It gives the same weight to each of the spacings. You'll need that. Now you can see our region, select number of answers and number of questions. You can see those as labels going across. Now self region, that is a variable of type string. On line 103, you can see that we have created a combo box for region. Right now you see North America in there. And its text variable is self region. And as you can see, self region is defined here on line 98. Now notice its parent is input frame. This is going to be on row 1. Remember, the label itself is on row 0, column 0, and some padding, Y and X. Now regions comes from the very top. Remember when we had this list? This list then gets loaded into that combo box. Now we're going to bind that with when combo box selected. This is an event. And when that event is fired, it's going to call a method called load num of questions. As you can see, this calling load num of questions is right here on line 83. Let's go ahead and fill that in. So when we select a new box, this event got fired, a box pops up and a user is able to select. See this right here? It's like me coming up and selecting Asia right now. So what happens is now when that gets selected, the value actually goes into self.region. Then up here in load num of questions, notice I say self region get. That is going to get it from this variable string. And I'm going to assign that to selected region. Now copy.deep copy is going to go out to the self.data for that region and put it in here. Now why am I doing a deep copy? Well, I don't want to get it by reference. Now reference means the original data. I want to make a copy of that data because, to be honest with you, I could insert, update, and delete that data, and I don't want it to affect the original data. So that's why I'm doing a deep copy. So if I modify it, it doesn't affect what we got from that, remember that file, that JSON file. So now I'm going to get the length of that, and then I'm going to update the option menu with the max entry. Now this right here is important because when we look at this app, every time I select a region, this drop-down combo changes with the number of rows that I have in there. So notice here for Asia, I can either show 10 questions, 20, 30, or 49. 49 represents the the number of questions that I have for Asia. Now if I go look at Caribbean and I come over here, notice that it changed again. And that has, I can either choose 10 or 14. So all this means is there are 14 flags that I associated with the region Caribbean in the JSON file. I'll show you one more if that's not clear. How about we do South America? This changed because of that load num of questions, and 10 or 12. So there are 12 flags for South America. Does that make sense? Now let's go look at that method called update option menu. As we can see in update option menu, I'm going to send in the max value. That's the total number of images that are for that particular region. Now here you can see that I'm going to call another method called generate series for that max value, and it's going to return me series. Now when I come down here, this may look complicated until I look at this one more time. So remember when I picked on Africa? Africa has 10, 20, 30, and 54. But when I pick Asia, it's got 10, 20, 30, and 49. But when I pick Caribbean, remember there's only 14 total flags. I'll have my 10 and then I'll have my 14. The last number will always represent the max number of flags that are available for each region. Now what I do here is I build a series, 10, 20, 30, based on the number. Now if it's 10, it's only going to be 10. If it's less than 20, it's going to be 10 plus that max number. So 10 and 14. I think you see it. So this function is very, very important, and all it does is build the values that are in this list over here. So after we generate the series, that'll be in series. So what I do is I go delete what's currently in there, and then I add what's current. And I set the series sub-0, the 10, to be the current value. Update option menu. Return back to create widget. I just finished the region combo. Remember the number of items. Now these are the answers. So let's look at this one more time. Remember when I choose number of answers, notice 4, I have 4 buttons down here. If I come over and say only 1 and hit start quiz, notice I only get 1 flag. So select number of answers. Well, that's what this does right here, the 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to add that number of questions control to the form. And remember, we just went through that update option menu and generate series to actually populate these values. Remember, here is self num questions var. So this is our variable on how we get values into this guy right here. On line 123, 124, we have the start quiz button. Notice it's going to call the command start quiz. And then on 126, 27, we have our reset button, and that will call reset quiz. Let's look at both of those. From start quiz, notice that's down here. Now the first thing we have to do is we have to get the region that they selected. On line 135, you can see if selected region equals select a region, you can see that right in that box. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show an error and then I'm going to return. So notice I'm just going to click the start quiz. You must first select a region. Well, that is that code right there. I'll say okay. Once I select a region and then hit start quiz, notice we can start using the app. On line 140, we continue, and I'm going to go get the number of questions the user wants to see. And then for that number of questions and the selected region the user has selected, I'm going to go get a list of countries that the user wants to be quizzed on. As you can see here, we are going to call a function called get countries by region. I'm going to send in the region, and I'm going to send in the number of the questions that person would like to see. Let us now write this on line 82. Now the first thing I want to do is begin with an empty dictionary, self.countries.dic. Now remember, every time we begin this game, I'm always going to go out and get a list and I'm going to load it up into this structure. Now here's a question for you. What is self.data? That's all the data. So if region is in all that data somewhere, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to build region_data. I'm going to do a deep copy. The goal of this for loop is to loop over this data called region data. And remember, some of them could have as little as 14 rows, some could have as much as 50, 56. But what I want to make sure is my list is unique and I don't want no dupes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop over that, and if there's no data, I want to get out of there. But I'm going to get the count and then I'm going to randomize that, returning an integer, and it's going to give me an index. And then for that index in that array, I'm going to assign that item here. And that item contains the country code and the country name. But then notice here, I'm doing region data pop. Well, that's removing this index value from the region data. It's now gone. And notice now I decrement my need by 1. Hey, are you at 0? Nope, come back up here to the top. So now my count will be whatever that was minus 1. And then I'm going to randomize it again. Now what this ensures is that I will never have dupes. Now you might start out by using a randomizer, but inside of that randomizer, you're going to get dupes. And this right here is written to prevent this. I've been using this type of routine throughout almost my entire programming existence. I think I have several other videos in C programming and C# that use this same type of methodology. It's pretty sweet. This is something you want to put in your I know how to do bucket. Let's continue. Now for this if, that means is that region name in there? Now if it's not, guess what I'm returning? That's right, an empty dictionary. So I'm not sure how this error would happen. The only way it could happen is somebody would come up here and put in a thing like right here, softwareNuggets. Now if I were to look for that, it's going to come back and say, you are not in my data. So this would be the error. Now we are back to start quiz. You understand how this works. And now we're just going to finish that up by initializing some values. So the current question is at 0. The score is 0. The num answers, well, you know where that came from, the combo. Num answers right here. Now load images. Let's take a look at that. Do you remember when we did get countries? And get countries, right away what we did was we said self.countries.dic equals empty, and then we looped over there and we build this. So that's a dictionary, key value, a dictionary. So we went and got the countries for that region, and now we're on load images. So we're going to begin with self flags equals a list, and we're going to initialize it to empty. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go get all the file names, and we're going to be using the OS function listdir. Now this will give us a list of file names that are in that directory that end with PNG. Those are our images. Now it's very important to remember what we built here. Now that was that country's dictionary. Now what we're going to say is country codes equals self.countries.dic keys. I just want to get the key values. And remember, the key value was only 2 characters. And those 2 characters are the first part of a file name. So it's 2 characters .png. So we're just going to get those key values. Now once we get the key values, I'm now going to loop over those codes, and I'm going to build that file name, lowercase like ag.lower.png. Now, is that file in all them files? And if it is, I'm going to append that into flags. And I'm going to stay inside of this loop while we have our codes. Remember, it could be 10, whatever that drop down number of questions. We're going to load that. Lastly, I'm going to set total flags equal the length of the self.flags. Remember, we initialized that to empty. I'm going to build it here. So this, see how they're all related? There you go. So when we're done with load images, I get to the end here, I come back up there and I'm going to say start new challenge. Start new challenge is just going to show the buttons and I'm going to update the scorecard. Now the first thing we're going to do here is hide all the buttons. Now we want to hide all the buttons because we have different states. Like when num answers is 1, I only want one button to show up. When it's in state 4, I want all the buttons to show up. But we have to hide it kind of like start over. Now hide buttons is quite simple. We're just going to say button, grid, forget. So button 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how you hide a button. Now based off of num answers, 1, you're going to show one button. 2, you're going to show 2 buttons. But notice like when you get on lines 3 and 4, you're using 2 lines. So this is row 3 and a 4 and row 3 and a 4. It's sticky west east, so that means they're going to be on the outer banks of the image. It's going to look nice. So start new challenge, I'm going to show the buttons. Remember, first I hit it and then I figured out how many buttons the user wants to see. And now update scoreboard, well that's just that questions correct in percent. I'm going to set it to the correct initialized value. So start quiz all started with someone clicked on the start button. And now they can also do a reset quiz. Let's see how that works out. So the first thing we do is the flag. When I do reset, I'm going to clear that image. And then num questions, I'm going to get the box variable and I'm going to assign that to here. Notice that I'm converting that to an int. So this is a string. I'm converting it to an integer. I'm going to set the score to 0, my current question to 0. I'm going to ask a question with the num questions value, and then I'm going to update scoreboard. And that's the reset. Now, perhaps the most difficult function in this whole app is ask questions. Now, it all starts off with, we want to make sure we can get out of here if possible. So we're going to say, if the current question is greater than number asked, or the current question is greater than the length of that, then I'm done. Now we need to know this because we certainly don't want to get into a dead-end situation. So this is kind of like as programmers, we can think of many things, but sometimes things happen. Now once we have this set up, we're going to start building our options. Now what are the options? Notice here when we get an image, we also get the button caption. So you see how this says Thailand, Singapore, Nepal, and I'm not quite sure how you say that. So here they said select number of answers. So you see here we get 4. Now these are dynamically added to this. Now from our file, remember our JSON file, the code, we know the correct answer. So here, when we're building the list of buttons, we know one of them for sure is the answer. We know that. But what we need to do is randomly select some other values. Now, what I don't want to happen is I don't want Thailand, Nepal, and that word as my options. I don't want that. So when we say random, that means random plus unique. Let me show you how I solve that. So back to ask questions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build an empty list called option list. Notice it's empty. And for sure, because if self.currentQuestion is greater than num questions, I have to be able to increment that somewhere. So self.currentQuestion plus equal 1. So here I'm incrementing this value with 1. On line 227, self flags. Now self flags is a list, or we can think of that as a collection of flag data. It's stored as an object. Now, current question is this current question that we're in. Remember, I incremented it by 1. Here I'm just decking it by 1, subtract by 1. Now, the goal here, you see I have 2 values. Now, all that means is flag code and flag path, I'm going to get out of this object, and that is nothing more than unpacking a tuple. That's all that means. So you can get out 2 values from this by unpacking. That's how you do it. Now notice here that I'm going to use that flag code to go up against self.countriesdict, that's a dictionary, and I'm going to get the country name. Let me remind you, we're trying to build 4 answers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, from this dictionary values, I'm going to get country list. And from that country list, look what I'm doing. I'm removing the correct one. So that doesn't belong in this list anymore. And then in options that was empty, I'm going to add our first possibility. You can imagine I added Singapore to this list. So we have the correct country in option list. Now for num answers, like 4 minus 1 would be 3. So I'm going to loop over this 3 more times. And I'm going to go get a random index. Remember, I removed one, so I will never get dupes with this. And I'm going to grab a country index by that index. Remember, it's random. And I'm going to put that in there. And then I'm going to remove it. Then I'm going to come back up here, and I'm going to get the next one. Notice count will be minus 1 because I removed it. And this will get me the next country. I'll assign it to option list, the next one. So I stay in this ellipse. I stay inside of this ellipse. Num answers minus 1. So now in option list, which was empty when we began, it now has 4 countries in it. And I know which one is the correct one. It's always right now sub-0. On line 242, notice random shuffle option list. So my list was empty. I populated it. I kept removing from country list. And now I'm going to shuffle the order. Remember, we knew originally order list, the sub-0 had the correct answer. Now I don't know where it is. I'm going to go find it. Option list, index, country, correct country. That's going to tell me what index is that as the correct answer. Does that make sense? I'm now going to show that image. So I have the flag path. I know the size I want to it. I know the size that I need, 660 by 412. And image lands ZOS. Now remember, at the very top of our program, that is coming from this pill. Make sure you do this command to start using that. Now, image flag, that is our control. And what I'm going to do, flag label is the name of our control. And notice that I'm going to start at row 2, column 0, a column span of 5, put some padding around it, and make it sticky to the north. Flag image is the actual image. And notice here that we're saying image equals self.flagImage. As you can see here, for each button 1, 2, 3, 4, using option lists, remember how I kept populating it? I'm now going to put the appropriate index after I shuffled it into the text. Does that make sense? So you see here, I started the app open. I picked North America. I want 4 answers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 questions. Now the first image appears. This right here is called flag label. The image is called flag image, and these are the option text that I got. Now, because I picked 4 here, that means I had to dynamically go pick the correct answer and then put, 3 other guesses there. I shuffled these. Now, what flag is this? Well, this is the Bahamas. Notice when we pick it correct, the color goes green. Now you can see here this says El Salvador. Now I could pick this, but what I want to show you is if we get it wrong, what happens? So I'm going to go pick St. Lucia. Ready? Now this is going to go red or like a light pink, and this will go green. Ready? Watch real fast. Was that quick enough? And on this one right here, we know this is Panama. I'm going to pick something wrong, and you'll see that this is pink and this will be green. You see that? Okay. St. Lucia is the correct answer. Okay. I think you got it. So that is the way that source code works. Here is a helper function to load countries. And all we had to do there was actually get the number of questions and then go load it. So I get the number of questions, and then I'm going to go call that method get countries by region. Notice region, number of questions. When I'm looping over ask question, remember I'm incrementing the current question. Now, when this right here is true, I need to call a method called show final score. So this means you're like all done. So at the very bottom of this, show final score, I'm going to get the number of questions. I'm going to calculate the percentage, and then notice I'm going to do a message box. So this will like pop up and kind of tell you quiz complete. And at the very bottom of the form, you will get the score label. On line 306, notice that we're going to reset the button color. Notice BG equals system button face for buttons 1, 2, 3, 4. And our last method, check answer. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to reset all the backgrounds on our buttons. Why? Well, because remember, previously a good was green and a error is light pink. Then we're going to see if the correct button was selected. If it's not selected, we're going to get a pop-up that says incorrect answer. Get out of there. We're then going to change the button's background to green. And then if it's not, we're going to change it to light pink. I'm going to update the scoreboard. After 1 second, I'm going to reset the button colors. And then after 1 more second, I'm going to ask the next question. And there you have it, our app. Well, we know the first thing we have to do is select a region. If we just hit start, we're going to get a warning. Come on, pick a region. So region, North America. I only want 2 possible answers, and I'm going to do them all. Let's start. Well, we know this is Haiti. And we know this is Montserrat. And you have to know that this right here is, I think it's Antigua. And ooh, they just give it to you, El Salvador. And this is St. Lucia. And this is Honduras. And this is the Bahamas. And this right here is Guatemala. And this right here is Dominican Republic. And this is Trinidad, Canada, United States. And, ooh, okay, this is a beautiful one. So notice you have a ship here, you have a ship here, you got 3 volcanoes, right? And that is Costa Rica. And then this right here is St. Vincent and Jamaica, Cuba, Barbados, and this is Grenada, And this is Dominica. And this is Belize. And guess what? Little 100% there. And there you have it, team. A Python program that's using TkInter to solve a problem, aiding you to learn all the flags for every country. This is a great app. You'll learn a lot. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below in the comment section. If you learned a thing or two, I would appreciate a thumbs up. That just shows me that you enjoy my videos. Until next time, take care